Veda, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, no problem. So let's start. Where did we stop in the last class? Can you people just try to recollect what we did in the last class? So we were talking about, okay, object class methods, right? Yes. Yep. Object class methods. Ketan, I saw your mail. Sure, let me try to do it, but continuously have to remind me for that. Okay. Yes, for every topic. Just you have to remind me. I won't bother if you mail me regularly. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So let's start. Today I'm going to talk about another object class method. Just a minute, let this ID load. So today I'm going to talk about ToString method first of all. We got a method, ToString method. So this method is also from your object class itself. You see the string method, ToString method, what it returns, what is the return type of this ToString method? What do you see here? Yes. Yeah, it's a string type, right? So ToString method basically the return type is string type here. Yes. So let's see how this ToString method works. Let's see how this ToString method works. Before we talk about ToString method, I've got something to show you people. Okay, let's see ToString itself. I'm sorry. I'll call ToString method. It returns a string value always. What is the string value? What exactly it returns? That's the question. What exactly it returns? ToString method, you'll find that It returns a string in which you'll have the class name at the rate followed by hash code value of that object. ToString method actually it returns the class name. So this object it belongs to which class? The class name at the rate followed by the hash code value of that object. That is what it does. Okay. So let me print this string value. You see, you got the class name at the rate followed by the hash code value. That's it. Okay. So what is the use of this? What is the purpose or use of this? Do you see any usage for this? Printing the class name at the rate hash code value. You know, I can say that it is of not much use for us. I can say that it is of not much use for us. How can we use it? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Now, before we move any further, I would like to also show you people this. Just check the statement once. What we are doing, we are trying to print the reference variable value, right? You know what it prints? Did you people try printing reference variable value? You know what? Yes. Let's try to run this code. It again prints the class name at the rate hash code value. So how can we analyze this? How can we understand this? What do you people think? That's right. Whenever we try to print the reference variable value, internally ToString method is invoked. What happens internally? The ToString method is called. It is same. Trying to print the reference variable value or calling the ToString method of the object class is same. Calling the ToString method of the object class both means the same here. Okay, fine. But now the question is, what is the advantage of this value which is written by the ToString method? What is the advantage of the value here which is written by the ToString method? how can we make use of this value which is written by the ToString method? So to make you people understand how can we use this ToString method, we'll go through this string class. So we'll call ToString method here using that string class object reference, and we'll try to print the reference variable values. Now let's see what it prints. You see, it prints the data which is stored in that object. It prints the data, whatever the data you have in that object, it is printed. So the ToString method of the function, the functionality of the ToString method in the string class is different, right? It prints the data which is stored in that object. Now, can you people tell me which functionality, which functionality is better here? Printing the class name at the rate hash code value, or printing the content which is stored in that object? That means not printing, returning the data. The ToString method returns the data which is stored in that object. That is one thing which we saw earlier. The ToString method of the object class, it returns the class name at the rate hash code value. Which one do you think is better? Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, you see, now we saw two different functionalities, right? Returning that class name at the rate hash code value, the ToString method of the object class, it does that. But returning the content of that object in the string format. Okay, what is the ToString method of this string class is doing? It returns the content. Mm, yes. So this one is better. You people are right. This approach is better. Instead of just printing the class name at the rate hash code value, so printing the content, sorry, returning the content which is stored in that. object is better. Okay, yeah, so we can go for this. So, and actually this is what you need to do. ToString method should be overridden. You see, the string class is overriding the ToString method of the object class such a way that it returns the data or the content which is stored in that object. It returns the data, or I can say the content which is stored in that object. Yes. Okay. Yes. This is how we need to override the ToString method. Fine. So let's try to override the ToString method in the item class. First of all, I'll give you people some notes on this. So object class ToString method returns a string which contains class name at the rate class name at the rate hash code value. Okay, it returns a string which will have the class name at the rate hash code value. Okay. So let's try to go through the documentation once, and let's see what the Java docs, is talking about, or what details we have here in the Java documentation about the ToString method. Let's refer once what it says, how to override it. Let's see. You see, it says actually what it is supposed to do. This is what is explained. So ToString method is supposed to return string representation of an object. In general, ToString method returns a string that textually represents this object. Very good. This is what is expected from the ToString method. So we have to override the ToString method this way. Okay, you have to override the ToString method this way. Okay. Okay, there is a question on what is it. Let me see. So overriding the method, please, all of you, uh, message me the questions publicly. Okay, or if you have any answers also, questions or answers, anything, because you see, again, I have to read it out to others also. Others don't know what is your question. Okay, please do that, all of you. So overriding the method is need or purpose of the ToString method, right? Okay, actually it is not the purpose of ToString method, but it is the purpose of the class which inherits that method. You got the point? It is the purpose of the class to override it. Why we need to override it, you see? So that we can quickly obtain that or read the data which is stored in that object. Now ToString method You see, this is what the documentation says. This is what we have extracted from the documentation. Returns a string representation of an object. In general, toString method returns a string that textually represents this object. So let's try to override it this way. Yes. So toString. Okay. What I will do is I'll construct a string here this way. That's it. Okay. So what is this slash n doing here? Can you people tell me? It is used to move the cursor to the next line. It is used to move the cursor to the next line. That is what slash n does. Yes. Okay. Now you see, we are constructing a string. Whatever you have in the double quotes, it will be printed as is. Whatever you have in the double quotes will be printed as is. Okay. It's text content, that's it. Followed by that, you see, we are reading that property value and we are assigning it to that string. We are assigning it to that string, I can say. So that property value, we are assigning it to that string. Yes. So this way, we'll construct the string here. And the string value is written. And the string value is written. So let's try to run this code. This time, if you call the toString method of the item class, so what it returns? It returns that textual representation of that item object. Textual representation of that item object. So we'll just try to do this. Either you call toString method explicitly. Even if you try to print the reference variable value, what happens when you're trying to print the reference variable value? What happens internally? Which method is called? ToString method itself is invoked. Okay, internally the ToString method will be called. In both the cases, the same thing happens. Okay, so let's try to run this code. You got that data which is stored in that object. When I'm trying to print the reference variable value, you see what we got here, that reference internally toString method is called for that, and the toString method returns the data which is stored in that object. Yes. That is how it works. Okay, so this is how you need to override ToString method. So is it clear for everyone? Anyone got any doubts in this regard? Okay, good. So did you people make a note of this? Okay, good. So always please try to uh, maintain a running notes, okay? Write down all these points which you're discussing in the class. Yeah, which I mentioned, which are right. Okay, next we have another method. Let's try to check this. What is it? Get class. Get class method. But get class method is slightly different here. Get class method is different. Let's see how it is different. So basically what the get class method does, let's see. So get class method returns the runtime class object. Returns the runtime class object of this runtime class of this object. What is this runtime class? Actually, I can say that it returns runtime class object reference of this object. Of this means the current object, I can say that particular object. So have you people noticed the return type? Just check the return type of this method. What do you see? What is the return type of this method? Class type. What is that class actually? You know what? You will find that in Java we have a class called as class. There is a class called as class in Java. You know that? Yes. There is a class called as class in Java. Class called as class. Yep. So what is the purpose of this class? How it is used? So I have to explain it. To make you people explain this, okay, let's take this example. You know what? The JVM, as I told you people, is responsible for executing the instructions, right? So whatever the instructions which we write, you'll find that the JVM is going to execute them. It's whatever the instructions we have here, the JVM is going to execute them. You know, JVM, whenever it comes across a class, whenever it comes across a class, you see in this case, now we have mentioned the class names here, right? So what it does is, you see, in this case, we are asking the JVM to instantiate that class or create that item class object. So what it does, first of all, it will load that class into the memory. Class in the sense the bytecode related to that class. It will load the bytecode related to that class. JVM will search for that class file, and it will load that class into the memory. Okay, it is going to load that class into the memory. After loading the class into the memory, you know what? It will create a class object. And one more thing, JVM on its own, it is not going to load that class. Okay, JVM, in order to load this class, it will take the help of class loader. We got something called as class loader. Okay, class loader. Class loader. So whenever the JVM comes across a class in the program, so it will instruct the class loader to load that class into the memory. It will instruct the class loader to load that class into the memory. So now it's the responsibility of the class loader to load the class into the memory. Once the class is loaded into the memory, once the class is loaded into the memory, you know what? A class object is created. This class object is created. A class object is created. I, I said there is a class called as class in Java, right? That class object is created here, I can say. That class object is created. Yes. You know, in that class object, the details about the class which is currently loaded, the details about the class which is currently loaded are stored. The details about the class which is currently loaded are stored. That is what happens. Once again, I'll repeat it. You know, the JVM, when it executes its instructions, what it does is, whenever it comes across a class in the program, in the code, so it will mention the class names, right? In the code will mention the class names. So JVM will instruct the class loader to load the class into the memory. JVM will instruct the class loader to load the class into the memory. So class loader will load the class into the memory. Class loader will load the class into the memory, and it creates a class object, and it stores the class details in this class object. It will store the class details in that class object. When I say class details, what does that mean? What do you people think? What could be the class details here? Yes, it will actually add the class name, the complete details about the class, what methods are defined in that class, the access modifiers used by the class, this class extends which class. So all the details about the class. The complete details about the class, the complete details about the class, they will be stored in the class object. So that is what happens. So whenever the JVM instructs the class loader to load a class, it will load the class into the memory and it creates a class object. So in the class object, it will store the class details. It will store the class details. Yeah. Okay. So I have a question now. You see the class object which is created. The class object. Okay. Just a minute. I guess there is some issue. Just a minute. Okay. Now can you people hear me? Okay. Good. Sorry. I guess there was some issue with the connection. So you see the class loader, after loading the class into the memory, what it does here, it will store the class details in the class object by creating a class object, I can say. Okay. Yes, that is what it does. That is what it does. Now it includes all the details here. It includes every detail, as I told you before. It includes all the details. You know what? We can actually obtain that class object reference. Okay, the class object which is created internally. So that class object is created internally. So we can obtain that class object reference. We can get that class object reference. So let's try to get that class object reference here. Okay. Yes. How can we get that class object reference? Let's see. For suppose I want that class object associated to this item object. So item one dot call this get class method. So this is where your get class method comes into the picture. So get class method returns the class object reference for this object. For which object in this case it is item object. For the item object it returns the class object. So in the class object you'll have the complete details about the class, I can say. You got the complete details about the class. Okay. Now here I'm storing that class object reference in a reference variable which is of type class. You're storing that class object reference in a reference variable which is of type class here. You see. Now let's try to read the class details. Let's try to read that class details. For example, I'll print that class name. Let's try to print the class name. Class one dot get name. Okay. Next, now if you want, we can also obtain that method details. What methods are defined in the class? So if you want the method details, then you have to call another method, get methods. Call get methods method. You know, the get methods method, it returns a method array. Method array. It returns method array reference, I can say. Method array reference. So you know what? Method is a class in Java again. Method is actually a class in Java. You see, the way the class object is used to store the class details. The class object is used to store the class details. Similarly, we got the method object which is used to store the method details. Similarly, we got the method object, method class is there, which is used to store the method details, I can say. Okay, yes. So there is a class called as method. So it is in which package? Can you people tell me? It is in which package? Method class is in which package? It is in Langer. It is in reflect package, which is a sub package of lang package. Okay, so it is actually reflect package. There is a package called as reflect. It belongs to that reflect package, I can say. So it belongs to the reflect package. Yes. So the way you got a class called as class, the class object is used to store the class details. Similarly, the method class object is used to store the method details. So here, now this get methods method, it returns that method array, right? So in that method array, you got method objects. So in the class, for suppose, let's say if you got 10 methods, just assume that in the class we got 10 methods. Then internally, you'll find that 10 method objects will be created. Internally, 10 method objects will be created, and in each method object or each method object will hold one method details. in each method object, you'll have one method details. In each method object, you'll have one method details here. That is how it works. Okay. So, so that means you'll get multiple method objects. You're going to get multiple method objects. So all these method objects, you'll find that they are stored into an array. That array reference is written here. So when you have multiple method object references, how will you manage them? You will store them into an array. Multiple method object references, you will store them into an array. And that array reference is written here. The array reference is written. Yes. That is how it works. So you see, I'll create a for each loop to read the elements from that method array. So for each iteration, you'll get one method object. Let's try to display this details. Get name. Okay, we'll see what is native. So hope you people got it. Now what I'm doing, I'm trying to iterate through that method array. In that method array, you have method objects as elements. So each method object holds one method details. Each method object holds one method details. That's it. Let's run this code. See, these are the list of methods. Okay. Did we define all these methods in the item class? Did we define all these methods in the item class? No. Then from where we got it? So they are actually inherited from the object class. They are from the object class, right? Yeah, that's it. Okay. So hope you people understood this, right? You see in the class object, you got the complete details about the class, I can say. You have the complete details about the class. Yes. Okay. Now, I have a question for you people. So why the JVM is making sure that this class is loaded into the memory? What is the purpose of it? Why it is storing that class details in that class object here? Hope you got my question. So why the class has to be loaded into the memory? What is the purpose? What do people think? Yes. You see, JVM should understand, it should know that class. It should have every detail about the class. JVM should have every detail about the class, I can say. So, you know, by loading the class into the memory, it is getting all those details. It will store them. It will store them. Because JVM itself is responsible for executing these methods, right? JVM itself is responsible for executing these methods. So JVM itself is responsible for instantiating this class. So you should have all the details, every detail about that class. So that's the reason why you load it and it will store it. Yeah. So hope you people got it. Why that class is loaded, and that class information is stored in that class object. Why that class information is stored in the class object. So any questions in this regard, please let me know. Just a minute, please. Just a minute, please. Give me 1 minute, please. Sorry guys, sorry. Okay, so now you know what, here I will show you people how to load a class explicitly also. You know what, even we got a chance to load a class explicitly. I said class loader is responsible for loading the class into memory, right? But we can also instruct the class loader to load a class. How can we do that? This is what you need to do. Now we have this item class, right? So we can just mention this class name. Just specify the class name. That's it. Okay, it throws an exception. I'll talk about exceptions later on. You see, uh, this for name method, it instructs the class loader to load the class into the memory. It instructs the class loader to load the class into the memory. So once the class is loaded into the memory, you know what? Immediately a class object is created, as I told you people, right? And it returns that class object reference. So we can take that class object reference. Next, you see, we got this class object now. That means we are explicitly writing the code to instruct the class loader to load the class. Okay, generally the JVM will load the class into the memory, but in this case we are instructing the class loader to load the class. That is what we are doing. Okay, yes. So now, you know, after loading the class, we have an option. I'm sorry, can you people see my screen? I have actually written the code here. I guess I was paused. Sorry. This is how you can write the code to load the class. This is how we can write the code to load the class. So, okay, you see, in the class called as class, we have this for name method. This is what type of method? Is it a static or non-static method? What do people think? Is it a static method or non-static method? It's a static method because we're using the class name. You see, class is the class name itself. Class is the name of a class, as I told you people. We got a class called as class. So here we are trying to invoke that static method, so which is used to load the class explicitly into the memory, I can say. Yes. So what is this value? To that method, I'm sorry, to that static method for name, we are passing the class name. I want to load item class. This is the class name which we are loading. Okay. Once the class is loaded, you see a class object is created and the class object reference is written here. Class object is created and the class object reference is written here. Okay. Yes. Now after loading the class, now we can create class object reference. Yes. Sorry, we can instantiate that class. Generally, how will you instantiate a class? How will you instantiate a class? How will you do that? Using new keyword, right? That we saw. Using new keyword. Yes, using new keyword. Constructor is used to to initialize that object. Constructor is basically used to initialize the object. But now I'm going to show you people a new approach. You see, we have a new instance method defined which throws an exception. I'll talk about exceptions later on. Don't worry about this. Just make a note of this code as is. Okay, yes, just make a note of it as is. So Now when you call this new instance method, where is this method defined? In the class called as class. It's a non-static method, you see. Basically this method is a non-static method. Yes. Class called as class is a non-static method. So it returns that item object reference. It will instantiate that item class and returns that object reference. But always it returns a superclass reference, object type reference. You have to cast it to item type. Okay. So all of you please make a note of it. This is the other way of instantiating a class. This is the other way of creating a class object or instantiating a class, I can say. You will use new instance method for that. So which method we are using here? We are using new instance method, I can say. We are using new instance method. Okay. But you see, in this approach, we cannot call the constructor directly. Internally, default constructor will be called. Internally, default constructor will be called. Yes. So this is the other way of instantiating the class. And generally, this approach you will follow. You'll follow this approach in server-side development. Especially, we rarely do this, but you will find that your web servers, application servers, they are developed using this concept itself actually. Yes, that means you'll find that later on in enterprise edition, especially in enterprise edition, we'll define the class. Okay, we'll pass that class definition, but instantiating that class, initializing that class, it will be taken care by the container. We'll come across such classes in the enterprise edition. In advanced concepts, you will see that. Okay, we'll define a class, but we will not instantiate it. So who will do it? Server will do it. Internally, servers are developed to create objects for our classes, which will supply them to the server. Okay. So, but as of now, just try to understand the technical details of it. You'll come to know about the applications later on. So later on, automatically, you people will understand on your own. Okay, this is how the code is used actually. Yeah. Okay. So any questions in this regard? Always new instance method, it returns superclass object reference. That is object type reference. The return type of that new instance method is object type. It returns a superclass reference. So we have to cast it to appropriate type to that item type. So why the new instance method? Now if you dig into more details, you see you will find that in the class called as class, you have this new instance method, and we are using this new instance method to create object, right? This new instance method, it is used to create any type of object, not only item object. So we can load any other class, and you know what, here it can instantiate that class. It can actually instantiate that class. Yes. So because this method can create any type of objects, So the return type of this method, you will find that is object type. This method is responsible for creating any type of object. So we'll use it to create different types of objects. So just imagine, so the developer who's defining this new instance method, so Java people, when they developed this method, so they have to provide the return type for this method, right? They have to specify the return type for this method. The developers who have defined this new instance method, they have to specify the return type of this method, right? So what will be the return type of that method? That is what they thought. Now this method is responsible for creating any type of object. It can be user defined, predefined. So you see, that is where the return type is mentioned as object type, because object type is super type of all the classes in Java, right? So object type reference can hold any object reference. Object type reference variable can hold any object reference, any class object reference. Yes, that's the reason why the return type is object type. So always that method returns object class reference, object type reference, super type reference. We have to cast it to appropriate type. So we have to cast it to appropriate type. Yes. Is this clear for you people what I've explained now? Even if you didn't, don't worry. Okay, anyways, we'll see this a lot of times here. But hope most of you people got it. Still, anyone got any issues? Let me know. I'm talking about this predefined method new instance which is defined in the class called as class. So they have specified the return type of object type. Return type as an object type. Why the return type is object type? Why not item type? Because new instance method, it creates many different types of objects. It is used for creating different types of objects. So there should be a common return type. So that's the reason why object class is used as a common return type, a generic return type I can say. Okay, that is the purpose. So any questions? Okay, good. So if it is clear, then I have a request today. Will please stop it little early. Okay, I'll stop it little early, but I'll try to definitely extend the class tomorrow. Okay, today we'll stop it here. I'll try to take a half hour extra tomorrow. Okay, yes. So we have a class tomorrow at same time, and we'll continue discussion. So there is one more method which I need to talk about. That method is little important and complicated also. That is clone method. We'll see how to clone an object. That means this is another way of creating an object. Okay, we'll see that. Fine. So I'm stopping it here today. So we'll meet tomorrow at our regular time and we'll continue discussion. Okay. Yeah. So thank you all. Bye bye.